How does a 52-year-old immigrant who lost all his land in the Russian Revolution, had no money, spoke no English, change the trajectory of American wine? You may know who I'm talking about. It's Dr. Konstantin Frank, whose work in the Finger Lakes in the 1950s was revolutionary for all of American wine basically since then. And whether you've heard of the Finger Lakes or not, this is definitely a story that you have to know to really understand how American wine ended up being what it is today. This is the American Wine Rebel Show, where we dive into the history of American wine and uncover American wine's best kept secrets. I'm Meg Siobhan, and I hope you poured yourself a glass of something good because I don't like drinking alone. And of course, today I am drinking a Riesling from the Dr. Frank winery, which is still family owned, still exists in the Finger Lakes today. I have visited it. It is a lovely property, and their Riesling is just spectacular. That's what the Finger Lakes is known for in general. So super happy to be sipping on this one today. But you may see that I have a mystery bottle here as well. And this is a red wine that I'll be opening up in a little bit. We'll talk about both of these once we talk about the story of Dr. Frank, but definitely stick around. And if you have any guesses about what this red might be, let me know. I'm curious if this is one that you've tried before because it's a little bit more obscure than this Riesling. So Dr. Frank's story. We're in the 1950s in New York, and that's actually not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. This is post-Prohibition, and the U.S. is producing a lot of bulk, very sweet wine. So remember, we haven't been drinking wine for many years because of Prohibition. So people's tastes were not really used to what we might call like good wine or fine wine today. It was a lot of like jug wine, but Dr. Frank changed that for basically the trajectory of American wine drinking, because I don't know about you, but I like a lot of different wines that are not bulk, cheap jug wine. But to really set the stage and understand about how all of this happened, we have to back up to July 4th, 1899, when Konstantin is born. And he was born in Odessa, which was part of the Russian Empire at the time. And he's born into a family that actually has some money. So his dad has connections to the railroad. His mom came from a merchant family, and so they're pretty well off. And they have a lot of land. And some of that land is vineyards. So Konstantin grew up around these vineyards. And then World War I is happening, and the Russian Revolution occurs in 1917. And Konstantin joins the White Army. So he's part of that. He comes from a land-owning family. They don't want the communists to take control, but obviously, that's not what happened. The communists take control. Konstantin's family loses all of their land. So at the time, life under the Soviet Union is not going so well for Konstantin. He is an intellectual. He's a scientist. He likes to experiment. And the government's not so supportive of that. And so he decides to take his wife and children and flee the Soviet Union. And so in 1951, they all immigrate to America. And when they come, Dr. Konstantin Frank doesn't speak any English. He has no connections. And honestly, I cannot imagine what this would feel like. So he was a well-respected scientist with a lot of connections, especially in the wine industry back in Europe. He published multiple doctoral theses on growing grapes in harsh conditions, like in Russia, where it's cold and difficult to grow good wine. And he leaves all of that, and he's working as a dishwasher in a restaurant. But in 1952, there's an opportunity at the Cornell Geneva Experimentation Station, which is where they make wine. And so he takes this opportunity. And at the time in the 1950s, this is post-Prohibition. People are not used to drinking fine wine. They're drinking cheap bulk jug wine. And a lot of this came from American hybrid and native grapes that grew well in the cold conditions, but didn't necessarily create fine wine. Which, sidebar on all of this with the hybrid and Native American grapes, they get a really bad rap sometimes for being foxy, for only making sweet wine. And there's a lot of wineries today that are experimenting with them still and trying to create quality fine wine. And so I wouldn't knock all of them. It's more difficult, but there are some really good ones out there today. But at the time, Gala was running the show. It was releasing big, bulk, sweet wine. And Dr. Konstantin Frank comes in and he says, guys, we can actually grow vinifera grapes, the European types of grapes, like Riesling, like Chardonnay, like Pinot Noir. And we can grow them in New York and we can make quality wine. And he basically got laughed off the stage. All of the other guys that he was working with at the time said, we can't grow those here. It's too cold. It's too harsh. And even though Dr. Frank had literally written papers on this and was well respected as being a scientist that knew a lot about how to grow these grapes in these conditions, back in Eastern Europe, these guys didn't know who he was. He had no reputation here in the States. And so he's struggling. But then in 1953, Dr. Frank meets Charles Fourier, who is a French scientist and grape grower, and he actually has a little kernel of faith in Dr. Frank. And so he gives him a job, and he gives him an opportunity to do what he calls the impossible, which is figure out how to grow these vinifera vines in a cold climate like New York. And Dr. Frank steps up to the challenge. He takes American rootstock and he starts grafting on, they say over like 60 different varietals to figure out what's growing. And he plants all these little plots of the different vines where he makes small batches of wine that he tries. And he tries them individually and he blends them and he's experimenting. And it's working. And all of the other people start to look around and they say, oh, Dr. Frank is maybe onto something here, and this is actually working. So then in 1957, Dr. Frank becomes an American citizen, and he purchases a plot of land on a lake called Keuka Lake, which is part of the Finger Lakes. So these are lakes in kind of central New York State, called the Finger Lakes because they look like fingers. And these lakes were carved out by glaciers back during the Ice Age. And so they are deep. In fact, some of the legends from the native people in the area say that the lakes are never ending. So they're these very deep, narrow, thin lakes, but water is great for grape growing. Water helps moderate the climate, keeps it from being too cold when it's cold out, keeps it from being too warm when it's warm out. So they're really helpful, not just for the water source itself, but to help moderate the climate. And so he purchases a plot on Keuka Lake. Dr. Frank at this time is 60 years old, but he's planting vines and he starts to mentor a lot of the people around. He's donating some of his cuttings and he's teaching other people in the area how to grow these European vinifera vines and make good wine. And so he ends up being really the founder of the Finger Lakes area and begins to encourage people to start to make this wine for commercial reasons and sell it. And it's good. And in 1962, Dr. Frank founds Vinifera Wine Cellars. And this name just really is meant to stand out and sort of slap people in the face a little bit because he's literally naming it after the type of vines that people told him would never grow in the area. And so people start following in his footsteps, and there are a ton of wineries on the Finger Lakes today producing a lot of these vinifera grapes like Riesling and others because of what Dr. Frank did. To celebrate Dr. Frank's legacy, let's talk about this wine because I have been so busy talking, I haven't got to sip on it much, but it's so good. So this is a classic Riesling. This is a dry Riesling from the Dr. Frank winery. This is the 2023 vintage here, and it's got a little bit about him on the back, which I think is super cute. But I'm gonna give this a try here. One of the first things you will always notice about Riesling is the acidity. Riesling is a very highly acidic grape. And this is why it actually grows so well in a cool climate like New York. So when grapes grow, they naturally start very high acid. I don't know if you've ever eaten like a bunch of grapes and you get the little like baby green grape that's maybe on a red grape bunch that never grew up to be a big grape. And when you eat it, it's sour, it's acidic, it doesn't have much sugar. And that's what baby grapes are like. And as they ripen, the sugar levels increase and the acid decreases. But in a cooler climate, grapes are going to ripen a little bit less, which preserves some of the acidity. And Riesling is a grape that's meant to be acidic. It's still going to get some of those sugars in it. So this is not searing the inside of my mouth, but it's so zippy. It's refreshing. Riesling has a lot of notes of lemon, lime, apple, some minerality to it. And this one is a dry Riesling, so it doesn't have a ton of sugar to it, but it's still very fruity. But the Konstantin Frank winery produces a off-dry, semi-sweet, sometimes a sweet Riesling as well. And they're actually doing some sparkling Rieslings also, which is super unique, but Riesling is not a grape that's used super often. So to use Riesling is really unique. I wish I had a bottle of that, but I don't today. So I will have to try to find a bottle of these sparkling Riesling because I have never had that before. All right, and now on to the second mystery bottle that I have here. So this is something that's a little bit maybe more unexpected, but this right here is a Saperavi from Standing Stone Vineyards. So this is another Finger Lakes winery here. This one is on Seneca Lake, which is a different lake than Keuka Lake. But this is a really interesting grape. So Saperavi is a Georgian grape from the country of Georgia, not the state. And Georgia, it's close to where Dr. Frank would have been when he was in Eastern Europe. And this is one of the grapes that he helped bring over to the Finger Lakes to start planting and to make popular there. And it's not something that's super widely available. Especially throughout the United States. Georgian grapes are not as common as maybe they should be because they're really good. But this is one that there are growing a lot of in the Finger Lakes. It grows really well there along with some other Georgian varieties like Arcasatelli would be another one. But this grape itself is really special because it is what is called a Teinturier grape, which it says right here on the bottle. And that means that this red grape actually has red pulp. So most red grapes have red skins and the pulp inside is actually white. Like the table grapes that we eat. I mean, they're different than table grapes, but like table grapes, if you buy a red grape, if you split it open, you'll see that the inside is actually white and the red wine only gets its color from the skins. But this one here, it's not the only grape, but it's super rare for this to happen. The pulp inside is red itself. So this wine is going to be super dark and inky. But rather than just telling you about it, I'm going to open it up and we can take a look at it. So this wine is inky colored. It is almost opaque. I can't see anything through this wine here. It's very pretty though. It's like a purpley red. This has such bright acidity, but it also has such nice tannin as well. But this wine has a lot of both red and black fruits. So I'm getting red cherry, blackberry, red plum, and a little bit of an herbal green note as well. But it's really nice. I'm quite enjoying this. But one of the things that is especially interesting about this bottle and why I chose Standing Stone, because a lot of wineries are producing Saperavi these days in the Finger Lakes, is that the family that originally owned this winery purchased the Saperavi grapes from Dr. Konstantin Frank back when he was alive. And so these vines originally did come from him. This wine right here is his legacy, the Riesling, and I think both of these just really sum up how much impact he had on the Finger Lakes, but also American wine as a whole and growing the vinifera grape here. So if you've never been to the Finger Lakes, it's an amazing area to visit. It's beautiful. If you're a fan of Riesling and Gewürztraminer or Cab Franc is really big there as well as these Georgian grapes like Saperavi, Arcasatelli, and some others. So definitely would recommend checking them out. And I hope you enjoyed this little bit of history here about Dr. Frank and the Finger Lakes. So if you found this interesting, be sure to subscribe on here. Follow me on Instagram at American Wine Rebel. Check out AmericanWineRebel.com, where I post all of these videos and some more information about the wines I am enjoying drinking. And until next time, cheers!